Welcome, brave souls, to Fear File Chronicles, your one-way ticket to spine-chilling stories and terrifying tales. Tonight, we'll be diving into the darkest corners of the human mind with a story. I was born and raised in a cult. When I escaped, I learned that their beliefs were real. Part 4, penned by the twisted mind of Adamantius. Together, we'll explore the unexplained and face our deepest fears. But before we begin, if you enjoy trembling in terror, be sure to hit that like button, share this video with your fellow fear fanatics, and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to click the bell notification so you never miss an eerie episode. Your support truly means the world to us, so feel free to leave a comment below to join the Fear File Chronicles community. Now, without further ado, let's unravel the mysteries of the unknown together as we delve into tonight's fear-inducing story. I was born and raised in a cult. When I escaped, I learned that their beliefs were real. Part 4. Dim the lights and prepare yourself for a chilling journey into the Fear File Chronicles. As we descended down toward the gates, it was uncanny. The farms, the buildings, even the trees, all looked exactly alike to my compound. It was like a wound had just closed, only for a thin, sharp knife to slice through the stitches, letting the flesh flop back down to either side, revealing a fresh gash. The armed man didn't follow us inside. Instead, he headed back up the hill once the gates closed behind us. Maybe he said goodbye. I didn't hear it. The click of the lock sent a searing, hot flash across my body. My legs were numb and weak, and the unarmed man gave me a worried look, his eyebrows sinking as his jaw tightened.
Allison, everything okay?
I couldn't speak. My tongue was glued to the hard palate of my mouth, flexing in fright as it burrowed into the back of my front teeth, trying to push through and send thin strips of fleshy noodles through the gaps. In that instant, I was back there, an unloved child raised by hollow people with nothing but pure horror awaiting in my future. Round and round it goes, all my effort stomped back into the ground, only to be exhumed and reanimated again, lying in wait for the inevitable new death. The man kneeled down, his face just inches away from me.
Come on, let me show you around. It's just like where you grew up, but better.
His soft eyes transmuted into a cloudy web of secrets. He took my hand and nudged me forward. A familiar, primitive survival instinct emerged from the bottom of my spine, sending a jolt of electricity up my back and straight into the thick of my mind. This isn't the time to stop. Move. My legs gradually let go of their stiffness, and the man led me down a worn dirt path toward the farms. The people here grew potatoes and carrots and other root vegetables in vaguely square lots, just like we had. A few of the women were watering the plants using scratched, deep green plastic watering cans. They glanced at me with frustrated faces, wrinkled beyond their age by the sun and back-breaking work. Mom used to work on the farms. She'd sometimes sneak funny-looking carrots back home and let me enjoy them all by myself, which was a crime in the group, for all had to be shared among the others. But she did that, just for me. The memory of Mom began to hold slivers of light, faint reverberations of humanity, trying to push through the dark mist. Then the taste of her mind returned to my mouth, and I had to exile her back to a dead memory by biting down on my tongue. The taste of iron swiveled around my tongue.
Don't worry, you won't have to do any farming,
the man said with a crooked smile that almost resembled a grin.
That's for the women to do. Did your parents do any farming back home?
I didn't answer. The farms were followed by a large area full of rickety wooden houses with metallic roofs that slanted just enough to let water roll off them. I could hear voices coming from inside them. Their walls were so thin that soundproofing was basically non-existent, just like back home. Cold and damp and heat and shouting fights penetrated through them, and I could feel that distinct cold breeze coming through the wooden slits on those deep winter days. its wheezing laugh untampered, slowly penetrating through the blankets and freezing my bones. I shivered in the sun. Kids were running between the houses, playing with each other, laughing with glee. They looked around my age. Parents ran after them as they saw me and the man approach, their voices taut and assertive. Were they afraid of the man or of me? Bringing in people from the outside was unheard of. At least it had been for us. To them, I must be an outsider. They didn't know me, and what did it matter to them, even if I had grown up in a place exactly like this? They wouldn't care. True love was reserved for the group, period. We wiggled our way between the houses, the man talking about how they were built and how much sturdier they were here than they had been back home. I didn't believe him, but his lies seemed not so apparent to him. Or maybe he just didn't care. That's how adults talk to kids, spewing bullshit all the way home, unaware that those kids might in fact have the mental capacity to understand and to challenge what they hear. Those adults have forgotten what it's like to be young, and how knowledge isn't an all-inclusive gift granted on a specific day marking adulthood. It's always growing, stretching farther and wider like a net, and mine was wide enough to detect that the unarmed man was full of shit. The houses soon gave way to a large clearing around the middle of the compound, which was just dirt and tufts of grass, kept empty for a reason.
We're not far off from the ritual here,
the man said, admiring the empty field.
Look, I know it must seem like a horrible thing, but I can assure you that had everything gone right, things wouldn't have turned out the way they did. Don't worry, we don't blame you, Allison. In fact, you might just be the key in making it work. You're special.
I don't want them to die, I told him.
And they won't.
The man turned to look at me.
Allison, what happened back home was not how it was supposed to go. Nobody was supposed to die. It was all wrong, and that's your father's fault. The ritual is done for the greater good. You have to trust me on this, okay?
Okay, I didn't want to give in, but I knew I had to appease him, or at least seem to. Sometimes it's good to be underestimated.
Come on, let me introduce you to one of the elders of the group. I know you must have 1,001 questions, a smart girl like you. He'll have all the answers you need.
The sun was setting now, descending a faint orange glow on the compound. We walked across the clearing and up a rocky hill until we wound up at a complex of buildings, built with real solid materials. Unlike the living quarters, an ivory tower, if there ever was one. We walked up to the largest building, 2 stories high, and the man pressed buttons on a small box next to the solid steel door, which beeped with each press of the finger. I counted 4 beeps in total, although I couldn't see the corresponding combination. Inside, we were greeted by an old man dressed in a shiny black suit jacket that reached almost all the way to the floor. It swung beautifully with each step, fitting tight around his chest while air puffed up under its backside, making the old man seem much longer and somehow more powerful than his frail body let on.
"Welcome, welcome,"
the old man exclaimed, a wide smile revealing exceptionally white teeth.
"Jackson,"
he said with a nonchalant nod to my escort. His smile professionally turned off, then turned his gaze to me, reverting back to his shiny grin.
"And you must be Allison. It is a pleasure and an honor to meet you, darling."
He held out his hand, and I reluctantly shook it. His hand was soft, like it had never pulled a carrot out of the ground or moved an ounce of dirt with a rickety old shovel.
You're all set here then?
The unarmed man, Jackson, said to the elder.
"We're splendid. Thank you again."
Jackson turned to me, his face stiff and rural in emotion.
It's going to be okay, Allison. They will take good care of you.
He didn't wait for a response, which I probably wouldn't have given him anyway, leaving through the door with hurried strides, like he was somewhere he wasn't supposed to be, shutting me in with the old man.
"You must never have been inside an elder's homestead before. Come, let me show you around,"
the elder said. We walked through corridors and stopped along empty rooms, peeking inside them as the old man explained their different uses. The concept of having multiple rooms and for specific uses was completely foreign to me. The house I grew up in had one large room, separated by thin boards my father had installed, to different stages of completion, to assert different areas for different things. In reality, we had so little space that things were done where they could. Sometimes my room acted as a kitchen, and the kitchen as a workshop. Movement was tight, and one could barely walk through it, instead having to jump and swerve around walls and the few things we owned. The house enamored me with its sheer scale, and I was barely listening to the old man's privileged ramblings. There were chairs in hallways that nobody sat on, and decorations unlike I'd ever seen. Paintings, vases, and intricately designed bowls. He had obviously lived here long, his steps following patterns he must have walked 1,000 times before. On the second floor were the living quarters, most of their doors shut, and the man escorted me inside of one. In the left corner, there was a neatly made bed large enough for 2 people, with fluffy fabrics peeking from underneath the shiny bedspread. To the right, there was a large wooden desk with a single carved wooden chair behind it and 2 lesser chairs in front. The elder took his post on the carved bench, folding his jacket neatly behind it as he sat down.
Sit down, please.
He gestured. I sat on one of the lesser chairs cautiously. The wood contoured to my body pleasantly.
This is my office, and by proxy my bedroom.
The elder said,
And you're welcome to knock on my door anytime if you have something you need.
The old man leaned back in his chair, his hands comfortably resting on his lap as he stared at me, awaiting a response. I knew I needed to give him something more than an okay. Who's Jackson? Does he work for you? I asked.
Jackson is a part of the Watchers.
The man paused for a moment, readjusting himself in the chair.
By now, you must have inferred that your compound, your home, is not the only one of its kind. Where we are right now we call Sector 4. Yours was Sector 2. There's 5 overall. Well, 4. Now that Sector 2 is out, Jackson and the Watchers make sure that they're all working as they should. They interfere when there's trouble, as they did when the ritual at Sector 2 became compromised following your escape. He's a good man. You can trust him.
Words like trust and good had lost all meaning to me by then. That signature anger started to fester in my stomach, but I did my best to keep my cool. If I was to have any chance here, I needed all the information I could get. And these sectors, they're all doing the same ritual, I asked.
Correct, although they're all in different stages. The children need to reach a certain age before it is feasible to attempt it. Yours was the closest we have gotten in decades at achieving a successful ritual.
The man paused, and his eyes seemed to dim in deep thought, burrowing deeper into their sockets.
Let me be clear. What happened in Sector 2 was entirely horrific. It was not our intention for things to go down that way, and you are not to blame. Some men, they're unscrupulous. Stupid, even. And what happened to your mother and the other kids? Tragedy, simple as that. I am so sorry for any pain it has caused you. I take my share of the blame.
Thank you, I said, the words entirely hollow. But what do you need me for?
Excellent question. I knew you were a smart one. We would love to have you work for us, to help complete the ritual here at Sector 4. Your duties will be similar to that good man Jackson, except on a smaller scale. We would like for you to oversee the children of the group. Make sure that what happened to you doesn't happen to anyone else. Keep them in check, if you will.
So I would make sure no one escapes, that no one gets away like I did.
Exactly,
the man said with vigorous satisfaction. But, I began. The anger was now a rough ball, scraping the sides of my throat, begging to be let out. But what if they need to escape? The reason that I escaped was because things were so bad. I mean, I was miserable. My parents hated me, but even if they didn't, I wouldn't have wanted them dead. I wanted to get away, as far away from there. Anywhere. Why would I not want that for the others? Why wouldn't I want to spare them of all that pain? I was scared of what I had just said, but I assumed that he was waiting for that question. It was the most obvious, and therefore the most important question of all. The man stewed on this for a moment, and I could almost hear the machinery of his rusted mind formulating a satisfactory answer. He wanted to keep me in check.
You're smart, but there is some information we keep from the children you included, for their own safety. Now, I trust you enough to divulge this information, and I hope that you don't abuse it.
He waited for a moment, and I nodded approvingly.
Life in the sectors is complicated, yes, but do you know what is out there? What the outside world holds? I came from there. I was born and raised there, and all I ever saw was suffering. Death and disease run rampant, and people kill their own brothers and sisters for a slice of bread, for a glass of clean water. We wanted to build something better, and that's how we came to be. It was tough at first, but we've made great strides to improve the lives of everyone in the group. That's why we love each other, because out there love is long gone, pure legend, a hollow memory. But we wanted something better. So you see, running out there is like running into the maws of a great beast. Why do you think so many people have joined us?
I didn't care why people had joined. I could see my father's anger relish in this depiction of a faithless, cruel world. So why would he strive towards love and community? Ignoring his question, I instead replied with a question of my own. And what about the ritual? What does controlling a bunch of kids and killing their mothers have to do with love and a better world? I could see from the flare in his eyes that I had asked the second most important question.
The ritual doesn't kill the mothers. Not in any real sense anyway.
I saw them. Their heads were ripped open. They were burying their bodies.
That's because the ritual was unfulfilled. Now, let me ask you this. How do you think we keep the horrors of the outside world away from us? Wouldn't it just trickle in like it has trickled into all parts of the world out there?
I wanted to say with guns, but instead I kept quiet.
The ritual protects us, or more accurately, Kealuth does. That is the wonderful being you saw back home, emerging from its home in the forest. Years and years ago, the first ones struck a deal with it, that it would keep us safe from the outside world, so that we could strive to live in harmony amongst our community. Kealuth is far older than any of us, and it took no small sacrifice for it to agree. You see, Kealuth is dying. Slowly, yes, but its time is running out. We agreed to help it birth more of its kind, and that's what the ritual is about. We and Kealuth form a sort of symbiosis, if you will. We complete each other, one aiding the other. It's a shame you didn't get to see it happen, for it is supposed to be a beautiful thing.
So you've never seen it?
I hope to see it, one day.
And the mothers. They're not killed if everything goes right.
Indeed so. They're given a new life, rebirthed into something greater, something pure. But your mother, and all the other mothers, did not achieve that stage. If everything had gone to plan, your mother would still be alive, serving the purpose for which she had prepared herself for. You see, we haven't forced anyone to join. Never have. Your mother was willing to sacrifice her body. Not because she relented in the face of our power and aggression. It's because she wanted to live again as something greater. She wanted to be reborn. And you wouldn't want to prevent that fate from anyone else, would you, Allison? It would be a cruel thing to let the women here perish like your mother had, stuck in a limbo of unfinished business, thrown into a godless pit. You don't want that, do you?
The old man leaned against the table now, his fingers crossing in a double-handed fist as he cast his skeletal shadow over me. Of course not, I said.
That's wonderful to hear,
he said, leaning back into the chair.
Wonderful indeed. Now I realize that you still must not fully trust me. That's good. Outsiders should never be trusted. And I'm glad that's stuck with you even now. But I want to show you something that will maybe help you understand how much you are needed. And maybe after that we can start forming an amicable bond.
He got up from his chair and I followed him back outside the building. We crossed a dimly lit path to a smaller, shack-like building, which was close to the fence surrounding the compound. The thick door was secured by a 4-digit code as well. Once we'd entered, the old man quickly closed the door behind us. The building was set up to be one big room with stacks of monitors laid in perfect unison across the back wall. They were all showing different moving images. Some of people walking, some from high up looking down at compounds. some pointing at tree lines. In front of the monitors was a wide, curved desk, fitted with all manner of technology that I understood nothing about. At the desk, on a padded leather chair, sat a person facing the monitors.
"This is Elder Alston. He's in charge of surveillance here at Sector 4.
The old man said. The chair swiveled silently, revealing a thin, middle-aged man. His features were abstract and partly shadowed, for the room held no other lights besides the monitors, which blared bright colors across the room that hurt my eyes. He looked young to be called an elder.
Elder John?
The man nodded at the old man.
It's a pleasure, and this must be Allison,
he said, turning his chair a few inches to face me, lifting up his hand for a shake, while staying seated. I walked up to him and shook it. His calloused fingertips scratched at my wrist.
"I wanted to show Allison what happens when a ritual goes wrong. Pull up all the feeds from Sector 4, please."
Alston, without responding, turned his chair back around with a swift push of his leg. A small curved thing clicked under his right hand as he pressed buttons with the left. Judging by his rehearsed movements, he had obviously done this job for a long time. One by one, the monitors started changing channels. Most of them showed nothing of consequence, but I could notice familiar settings. The farms shot from an awkward angle, the tree line near the elder's homestead, the path leading up to the main gates. The old man explained that these were all live feeds, that is to say, real-time video images of Sector 2, my home. A monitor located on the top left switched channels, and in it, I could see movement. It was showing the main clearing where the elders performed the ritual from a long ways away. Like a bird was watching from way up in the air. It was like magic. More feeds showing the clearing popped up in bright flashes. Although it was dark, I could discern the stage and somewhere along the middle, a mound I had never seen before. Something large and ominous moved there, and I feared I knew exactly what it was. My suspicions manifested to reality as one of the monitors in the middle turned channels. It was pointing at the middle of the clearing in sharp detail, blasting a cone of light in front of it.
"Do we have a sound feed?"
asked John.
coming right up,
Said Alston, pushing a different set of buttons. The room erupted into a frenzy of sound. Young voices, high-pitched and cracking from puberty and fear, screamed in fright and sheer panic. I felt like I was there with them. I couldn't pinpoint where they came from, but it sounded like they were all around me. Fear rushed to grip my senses, but the calm which Alston and John embodied kept my feet planted. I didn't want to seem weak. Quick bursts of movement were caught in the images, moving across the monitors, and finally the scene began to make sense in my mind. They weren't here with me. I was watching them from the safety of this cold, wired room. I saw one of the kids running straight at a monitor on the right, until the creature planted its hoof on the child's back, pinning him against the ground. The unmoving, hard ground did not give way, and I saw the child's eyes begin to bubble out of their sockets as his innards were being pushed out of his. I think it was a boy. Skin. The boy's ribs began to crack, one by one, until the part of his skeleton that kept his torso intact was nullified completely, sending his organs tumbling out from his sides through ripped skin. He looked like a tube of toothpaste rolled up to its very end, his body flat against the ground, his head propped up on the end of his defiled body. I could see the terror in his eyes. His mouth was agape, although no scream came out. There was nothing to scream. His lungs and throat and all the other things that he used to speak and breathe and live through were stomped to a flat disc. Finally, his eyes popped out of their sockets, and his face burrowed into the ground in lethargic death. On another monitor, I saw the beast use the tendrils shooting out of its body to lift up a girl with eerie precision. The girl was gripped by her waistline as she flailed her legs and arms in a futile attempt to escape. Another tendril came to view, which seemed to look at the girl loitering in the air like it was assessing her. It grabbed her left arm, and without any visible strain or effort, pulled it clean off, like it was a dead, rotten branch pulled from a tree. The girl screamed and flailed harder, which was of no use in her valiant effort to escape. Her dismembered arm had left a stump, which was watering the ground below with fresh blood as flesh like mammoth worms drooped with dead weight. 2 more tendrils came to view as the third dropped her limp arm to the ground. Each of them grabbed a plump, fresh limb, pulling them tight so that the only thing she could move was her head. The tendrils worked slowly, pulling her in all directions in a feat of pure torture, stretching her arms and legs into thin sticks. What came off first was her right leg, leaving a stump near her hip. The 2 remaining tendrils pulled in opposite directions until her right arm and left leg came off in one quick motion. The girl stopped moving her head. She hung midair, her chin tucked lazily in her chest. The creature dropped her body to the ground like it was a toy, which had lost its interest from too much play. The creature moved, and on another monitor, I saw it grab 2 boys, holding them a few feet off the ground in separate tendrils. With a thunderous force, it slammed the boys into each other, their heads craning in the air like they were going to shoot clean off their necks. But they were shown no such mercy. The creature did it again, and again, and again, each slam faster than the other, until the 2 boys were nothing but a pulping mess of flesh and scattered bone, dropped to the ground below as it moved on to its next victim. The old man must have sensed my distress, suddenly ordering with a commanding voice,
"That's enough."
Allison pressed a few buttons, and the room became quiet, the monitors switching back to their original feeds. I thought that, my voice quivered. Jackson said that he would take care of them.
"They were too late,"
Elder John said.
"Allison, let me make this clear. None of this was supposed to happen. It was entirely preventable. The Watchers were too late, their swift arrival prevented by the attempted cover-up. The men of Sector 2 were trying to accomplish. It was too late. Simple as that."
Everyone I had ever known was either dead or about to be. The world turned into a dark void, and I wished I had been among them. I deserved that. Maybe they would have been spared had I not run away. Maybe it would have all been okay, like John said. But he also said that it was not my fault. But how much could I trust him anyway? At least until all this, I'd been able to trust myself, trust my instincts. Now even that began to waver. I didn't know up from down anymore. That faithful voice that had told me to keep moving and to keep trudging myself forward in the face of all that I had endured was now gone. Not a peep came through. I was a husk, a walking curse, a being defiled by its own lustful greed for a better life, one which, for all I knew, was and had always been a figment of my own imagination.
"It's getting late,"
said John.
"Thank you, Elder Alston. I think I will show Allison to her quarters now."
We left the monitor shack and descended down the hill towards the houses where the rest of the group lived. It was dark now, and unlike back home, I didn't know each contour and hole in the ground by heart, so I had to make a genuine effort to walk without stumbling.
"I've arranged for you to live with one of the families. They're good people, and they even have a daughter your age. Well, all of the kids here are your age, more or less, but I think you'll like her."
We arrived at a doorstep, and Elder John knocked on the door. By the looks of it, the family was expecting us, for when the mom opened the door, her shirt was clean, and I could see behind her that the house had been dusted and organized in a manner befitting the visit of an elder.
"You must be Allison,"
said the mom. I nodded at her.
"I hope we didn't come in too late. I know you're expecting an early morning,"
John said.
"Please, Elder John, not at all,"
the mom replied, but it was too late. I knew that. She worked the farms, which was an early gig, so she'd been looking at a short night of sleep. John kneeled down and faced me.
"Well, this is it. Remember what we talked about. They'll take good care of you, and we'll talk more soon."
I had nothing to say to him, and I think he knew that. The mom grabbed my hand and escorted me inside as she said her reverent goodbyes to Elder John. Once the door was closed, the mom's shoulders dropped down, and tiredness washed over her face.
It's going to be an early morning, so I'll be heading to bed. You'll be sleeping with Luna.
She said. She escorted me to a makeshift room at the far end of the house, where there were 2 skinny beds placed on opposite sides. On the other one sat a girl with long, dark brown hair and green eyes. An oil lamp was placed on her bedside, and even in the faint light, I could see that she was pretty.
Luna.
The mom said,
This is Allison. I hope that you two can become friends.
Luna didn't bother answering. I could see that same lack of veracity that I'd had cloaking her face. Her mom seemed annoyed at her opposition for friendliness, but perhaps because of her tired state of mind, decided to let it go.
You take the other bed, Allison. This is your home now.
Thank you, I whispered and sat down on the bed, looking both at Luna and her mom, both of whom stayed quiet.
Well, good night then,
the mom said.
Luna can show you around tomorrow if you'd like.
She turned to Luna, and her eyebrows furrowed.
Won't you, Luna?
Sure thing, Mom,
Luna said, breaking her angsty silence with sarcasm. Even her voice was pretty, even if it was petty in tone. Once the mom left, Luna quenched the oil lamp, and we were thrust into complete darkness. I fumbled around the bed awkwardly as I took my shoes off and found my way under the thin blanket. I closed my eyes and wished never to open them again. Well, my friends, we've reached the end of tonight's chilling tale. I was born and raised in a cult. When I escaped, I learned that their beliefs were real. Part 4 by the talented Adamantius. I hope you've enjoyed our descent into darkness, and that you'll carry a piece of the Fearfile Chronicles with you as you drift into uneasy dreams. If our story left you shivering and shaking, don't forget to like this video, share it with others who crave a good scare, and subscribe to the Fearfile Chronicles for more haunting horrors. Remember to hit the bell notification so you're always among the first to know when a new nightmare awaits. As always, we appreciate your support and would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Sharing your fears and frights with us truly means a lot, so don't be shy to engage with our sinister community. Until next time, remember to embrace the darkness, for it is within the shadows that our most terrifying stories are born. Good night, and stay scared.